So imagine you're sitting in this really quiet, just, everyday UK cafe.
Right, just having a coffee.
Exactly. You've got your tea, maybe a pastry, and you're just watching the world go by. And then the people at the next table pull out what looks like this almost complex, slightly futuristic piece of electronic equipment.
Oh, yeah. Like a gadget you would normally see next to a latte.
Right. And they carefully fill it with cannabis right there on the table, and they just start inhaling.
Which, most people would panic.
Totally. Your first instinct is probably, well, someone is about to get thrown out, right?
Hmm.
You'd expect the manager to storm over or maybe even call the police.
Yeah, that's the default assumption for sure.
But instead, those individuals sitting there, they have the full, absolute protection of the law.
It's wild to think about.
It really is. So today we are doing a deep dive into this fascinating piece of primary source material. It's a recorded real-life audit conducted by UK medical cannabis patients in a public cafe.
Yeah, and it's such an eye-opening source.
It is. We're going to explore the precise physics that make this legally possible, the heavy psychological toll of criminalization, and how a potentially hostile public confrontation was flipped into this, masterclass in business and advocacy.
It's a scenario that sounds completely fictitious, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you aren't caught up on the current state of UK law, you'd think this was a prank.
Exactly.
But it is happening right now. And to understand how these patients can just sit in a public space and legally consume a substance that, let's be honest, most people still associate with illicit drug use, we have to start with the specific method of consumption.
Right, the how.
Yeah, because the legal protection they have isn't just this blanket permission slip to consume cannabis however they want. It hinges entirely on the rigid laws of physics and chemistry.
Right, the law draws this massive, brightly colored line between smoking and vaporizing. In the UK, medical cannabis is completely legal, but it absolutely must be vaporized.
Yes, that is the key detail.
Like, if you use a lighter, if there is a flame involved at all, you are instantly breaking the law. And let's break this down, especially for anyone listening who might be entirely new to the biology or the chemistry here.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Because it isn't just a legal loophole.
No, not at all. It's a fundamental change in how the substance interacts with the physical world. So think about baking chocolate chip cookies, right?
Okay, I'm with you.
If you put raw dough into an oven set to the exact right temperature, you get this beautiful controlled extraction. The heat melts the chocolate, the dough bakes, and you get exactly what you want. That is vaporization.
Right, you get the good stuff without ruining it.
Exactly. But if you take that same raw dough and throw it directly into a roaring campfire, it instantly incinerates, it turns into ash, and it creates this noxious, choking smoke. And that's combustion.
That is a great analogy.
Yeah.
Especially if we look at the plant's actual biology for a second.
Oh, please do. Break down the biology for us.
So the cannabis flower is covered in these tiny crystal-like structures. They're called the trichomes.
Trichomes, okay.
Yeah. And those trichomes hold the essential oils, so the active medical compounds like THC and CBD that the patient actually needs. And those specific compounds have very specific boiling points.
Ah, so that's where the exact temperature comes in.
Exactly. Vaporizers use a highly controlled heating element to blow hot air over the flower. It heats it just enough to reach those boiling points. So the medicine literally melts into a vapor that you inhale.
Leaving the plant completely unburned.
Right. It leaves plant material perfectly intact, just, slightly toasted. Combustion, on the other hand, destroys the plant matter completely at hundreds of degrees.
Like the cookie dough in the campfire.
Exactly. And that burning creates thousands of new toxic chemical byproducts like carbon monoxide and tar.
Okay, so by vaporizing, the patient gets the medicine without the toxic byproducts. But wait, I have to jump in here.
Go for it.
Because if I'm sitting at that next table in the cafe, I'm not really thinking about the patient's lung health,
Right, you're thinking about your coffee.
I'm thinking about my own airspace. Even if it's just vapor, cannabis has this incredibly distinct, pungent smell.
It definitely does.
So doesn't a cafe owner still freak out if their shop suddenly smells like a dispensary? Regardless of whether they're a smoker or not. How does the law protect the patient when the smell is still so obvious to everyone around them?
Well, that right there is the core friction point in these public audits. But it's also where the biology acts as the ultimate legal shield.
How so?
Because scent and intoxication are two completely different things. When a patient inhales that vapor, the alveoli in their lungs.
Wait, what are alveoli again for the biology newbies out there?
Oh, sure. The alveoli are these tiny little air sacs in your lungs.
Yeah.
They're responsible for gas exchange.
Okay, got it.
So those tiny air sacs absorb almost all of the active psychoactive compounds instantly. The medicine goes straight into their bloodstream.
Oh, wow. Instantly.
Almost instantly, yeah. So the vapor they exhale, while it might carry the aromatic compounds, the terpenes that give it that smell, it contains virtually zero psychoactive ingredients.
Wait, really? None at all.
Practically none. It is biologically impossible to get a contact high from secondhand cannabis vapor.
That is wild.
Right, it won't affect the barista, and it absolutely won't make the person at the next table fail a drug test at work tomorrow.
So it's just smell, no actual passive intake of the drug.
Exactly. The law is designed to protect bystanders from objective harm. So things like passive smoking and intoxication. Once you remove the smoke and the secondhand psychoactive effects, you transition legally from creating a public health nuisance to simply administering a private medication.
Okay, so the cookie dough analogy explains why you can't just use a lighter, and the biology of the alveoli explains why bystanders are totally safe.
Right.
But that creates this massive engineering challenge, doesn't it? You need exact temperature control to get the medicine without the smoke, and you can't exactly lug a convection oven into a coffee shop.
No, definitely not.
So how do patients actually achieve this precision on the go?
Well, that engineering challenge has birthed an entirely new category of highly specific, incredibly advanced medical devices.
Yeah, the sources mentioned a few of these, right?
They did, and they are fascinating. Patients use devices like the Mighty, which is manufactured by a German company called Storz and Bickel.
Stores and Beckel, right?
Yeah, and it's built like a tank. It features interchangeable batteries so patients aren't left stranded without their medication if they lose power while out and about.
Makes sense.
They also use devices like the Puffco, which is designed for more concentrated forms of the medicine. It features a 3D printed sleeve and wireless charging.
Oh,
Yeah.
which leads to that really funny moment in the audit footage.
Yes, where the patients initially call it a Bluetooth charger.
Right. They're like, I've got my Bluetooth charger before correcting themselves. Such a human moment.
It really is.
But it really highlights how far removed this technology is from traditional paraphernalia. I mean, they also mentioned the Tiny Mite too, and this UK-designed device called the thermal accumulator.
Right. And just to break it down briefly for anyone new to how these gadgets actually work,
Please do.
there are generally two ways they heat the medicine. There's conduction, which is like cooking an egg on a frying pan. The hot metal directly touches the plant material to heat it up.
Okay, conduction is the frying pan.
Exactly. And then there's convection, which is much more like an air fryer, where the hot air is just pulled through the material.
Got it. But what completely shatters the stigma here, I think, is how the government views these gadgets. The sources note that devices like the Mighty are actually MHRA approved.
Yes, the MHRA, that's the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency.
So basically the UK equivalent of the FDA.
Exactly. They have officially classified these specific vaporizers as legitimate medical devices.
Hold on. You're saying the UK government has officially stamped a cannabis vaporizer as real medical equipment?
Yes.
Because the source actually mentions a patient who used one of these devices in a private hospital room.
Yeah, right after a major hip surgery.
Right, after a major surgery. They were given a 1-gram maximum daily allowance by the hospital staff, and they just sat in their recovery bed and vaporized their medicine.
Right there in the hospital.
I mean, a hospital, a place with incredibly strict hygiene, oxygen lines everywhere, super strict air quality rules, and they allowed that.
They did. And it highlights a critical nuance in the UK healthcare system that, honestly, often confuses a lot of people.
How so?
Well, in the UK, there's this deep cultural reverence for the NHS.
Sure, the National Health Service.
Right. Because the NHS is this massive universal institution, there is this ingrained assumption that if the NHS doesn't provide a treatment, it must be illegal.
Oh, I see.
But the NHS operates on strict budgeting, and they require massive, multi-million-pound randomized controlled trials before they will prescribe something universally.
Which cannabis hasn't had.
Exactly. Because whole flower cannabis hasn't gone through those specific types of trials, the NHS classifies it as an unlicensed medicine, so they generally won't prescribe it.
But that doesn't make it illegal, right? It just makes it inaccessible through the public system.
Precisely. Private healthcare operates on a completely different model.
Okay, so if you pay for it yourself.
Right. If you go to a private specialist doctor and they determine that, based on your specific clinical history, cannabis is an appropriate treatment, they can legally prescribe it off-label. You just pay for the consultation and the medication yourself.
Wow.
So when a patient is sitting in a private hospital bed with a legal prescription and an MHRA-approved device.
Yeah.
They aren't sneaking in contraband.
They're just taking their meds.
Exactly. They are operating government-approved medical equipment to administer a legally prescribed treatment.
That distinction completely rewrites the narrative. I mean, it bridges the gap between what society views as a criminal act and what is actually a legally protected medical protocol.
It really does.
And having that piece of paper, that actual legal legitimacy, has a profound psychological impact on the patients. We have to look at the human element of this source material, specifically the invisible weight of criminalization that these patients carry around.
Yeah, that's such a crucial part of the source. The audit we are examining was conducted by two specific individuals.
Right.
One goes by Big Foss,
Yeah.
who's an Army veteran.
Okay.
He uses medical cannabis to manage severe post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as a debilitating spinal injury.
That sounds incredibly tough.
It is.
Yeah.
And the other patient goes by Smack Salad. He uses the medicine to manage autism, Tourette syndrome, and an eating disorder.
And what's really striking about listening to them is how candid they are. Like, they openly admit that the actual quality of the medical cannabis they receive in the UK still has a long way to go compared to other countries.
Yeah, they're not pretending it's perfect.
Not at all. But they both agree that the single biggest positive impact of getting their prescription wasn't even the physical relief from the medicine itself. It was, in their words, the massive weight lifting off their shoulders.
Which just speaks volumes about the trauma of prohibition,
Seriously.
To understand that weight, you have to understand the biology of conditions like PTSD and autism.
Right, tying it back to the biology again.
Yeah, because these are conditions characterized by a hyper-aroused nervous system. So it's a constant state of fight or flight, severe anxiety, and sensory overload.
Your body just constantly on high alert.
Exactly. And the medicine helps downregulate that nervous system. It calms it down. But for years, the very act of obtaining and using that medicine put them in direct conflict with the law.
So treating the anxiety was actually causing more anxiety.
Exactly. They described this intense daily paranoia, hiding away in their homes behind closed curtains. They were terrified of driving because they felt like constant targets for the police.
It's just a brutal paradox. The law was actively causing the exact anxiety that the medicine was trying to treat.
It really is a paradox.
I mean, imagine living your entire adult life knowing that the only thing that stops your Tourette's tics or helps you eat a single meal or quiets your PTSD flashbacks could also land you a police record.
Or cost you your job.
Right, or strip away your driving license. You are effectively treated as a fugitive just for trying to reach a baseline level of health.
Yeah.
And then one day, you pay for a private clinic, a doctor hands you a legal prescription, and you are suddenly a protected citizen.
It's a complete paradigm shift for them. The source even mentions this new police guidance that explicitly instructs officers to treat these individuals as patients first and suspects second.
Wow, patients first. That must feel amazing to hear.
The psychological relief of that is immense. And if we connect this to the broader theme of their advocacy, their history of being forced into the shadows is exactly what compels them to step into the light now.
Like they've had enough of hiding.
Exactly. By conducting these public audits, they aren't just managing their physical symptoms anymore. They are actively trying to heal the psychological trauma of being criminalized.
Which brings us to the actual execution of the cafe audit. Because stepping out of the shadows means testing these legal protections in the real world. A real world where most people, including business owners, have absolutely no idea these laws even exist.
Right, which makes it a very delicate situation. The setup for the audit is highly intentional and calculated.
They didn't just walk in blindly.
No, not at all. They don't just walk into a packed restaurant blowing vapor everywhere.
Yeah.
They purposely choose an empty cafe.
Oh, smart.
Yeah, and they explicitly check their surroundings to ensure there are no children around and no one breastfeeding nearby.
So they're really trying to be considerate.
They are trying to be as respectful as possible while still firmly exercising their legal rights. So they sit down, they order drinks, and they openly begin to prepare and vaporize their medication.
And as expected, the confrontation happens.
Right on cue.
The cafe manager approaches their table, but this is where the dynamic completely flips, which is my favorite part of the source material.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Instead of getting defensive or trying to hide the devices or, getting into a shouting match, the patients just immediately hand over a physical document.
Just, here you go, read this.
Yeah. They present paperwork based on the July 2022 Equality Act. Can we unpack that for a second? What does the Equality Act actually do in this specific situation?
So the Equality Act is this foundational piece of UK legislation that protects individuals from discrimination.
Okay.
Under the Act, a business is legally required to make what are called reasonable adjustments for someone with a disability.
Ah, so it shifts from being a drug issue to a disability issue.
Exactly. The patients patiently explain to the owner that because they have a legal medical prescription for a recognized condition, denying them the right to take their medication is legally treating a disabled person unfavorably.
So they're framing it entirely as a debate over disability rights.
Yes. They explain to the manager that using this vaporizer is functionally and legally no different than a patient using an asthma inhaler or a diabetic administering an insulin injection right there at the table.
Right, and if a business told a diabetic they had to go stand in the alley to inject their insulin because it made other customers uncomfortable?
That business would be instantly liable for a massive discrimination lawsuit.
Right. And the cafe owner has this incredible light bulb moment right on camera.
You're going to actually see a click for him.
Yeah. He takes the time to actually read the document, and he openly admits to them that if they hadn't handed him that paperwork and explained the physics, that it's vapor, not smoke, and there's no passive risk to the other customers, he would have thrown them out immediately.
Which is an honest admission.
It is. And he suddenly realizes that doing so would have been an open and shut case of disability discrimination. I mean, for a small hand-to-mouth family business, a lawsuit like that could mean bankruptcy.
Absolutely. It was a highly effective educational intervention that frankly saved his business from a potential legal catastrophe.
Totally.
But the brilliance of the interaction is that it doesn't stop at just avoiding a lawsuit. The conversation seamlessly shifts from legal liability to basic economics.
Right, because Smack Salad mentions his eating disorder.
Yes.
And Big Foz points out that for many patients, whether they are managing severe eating disorders or going through grueling rounds of chemotherapy, they physically cannot eat until they medicate.
The biology demands it.
Exactly. The medicine is what stimulates their appetite. It triggers that biological imperative to eat. And what does a cafe sell?
Food.
Exactly.
It's a perfect symbiotic relationship.
It is. The owner suddenly realizes he isn't dealing with a legal liability at all. He's staring at a massive, completely untapped demographic. These are customers who desperately need safe, welcoming environments to medicate. And the moment they do, their biology demands that they order food. Being a cannabis-friendly venue, or rather a legally compliant, patient-friendly venue, is actually a huge business opportunity for him.
And by the end of this interaction, the hostility has completely evaporated.
Gone.
The owner's practically brainstorming with them about the logistics of opening up an evening vape lounge.
It's amazing.
What started as this tense, potentially business-ending confrontation was completely transformed through education and just explaining the physics into a collaborative business strategy.
Okay, but, and I have to ask this, if you're hearing this and thinking, isn't this kind of a jerk move?
I know what you mean.
Like walking into a family business unannounced, knowing full well you might provoke a reaction just to test the waters? Is it really fair to ambush a cafe owner who is just trying to serve lattes and keep his business afloat? I mean, they are intentionally creating a stressful situation just to make a point.
It's a very real tension. And it's actually a question the patients themselves grapple with in the source material.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, they don't take it lightly at all. One of them actually quotes a phrase they use as a sort of guiding principle. You're not an activist unless you're risking something.
Wow. That's a strong statement.
It is. They openly acknowledge the friction they're causing, but they justify it through their mitigation of the risk.
Like choosing the empty cafe.
Exactly. They chose an empty cafe. They were exceptionally polite. And most importantly, they armed themselves with education rather than aggression.
They weren't looking for a fight.
They didn't go in looking to film a viral shouting match for views. They went in looking to force a necessary conversation.
So they essentially took the burden of education onto themselves.
Yes.
They functioned as a buffer, taking on that awkward, highly stressful first interaction so that the next patient who walks into that cafe, who might be far more anxious or frail or timid, doesn't have to face the wrath of an uneducated manager.
Precisely. It is a calculated social risk. By walking into that specific cafe and having that specific conversation, they achieved a systemic win.
They really did.
They educated a business owner, they protected him from future legal trouble, and they permanently carved out a safe space in their community for vulnerable patients.
It's just an incredible chain of events from start to finish. So what does this all mean when we step back? We've seen how a highly specific technological shift The engineering required to move from burning a plant to precisely vaporizing it completely changes the chemical output.
And the biological impact, right?
Exactly. And because of that physical change in the biology, combined with the rise of private medical clinics and the legal protections of the Equality Act, an act that has been deeply stigmatized for decades has been entirely transformed.
It's a whole new world.
It is now a legally protected, medically necessary activity that can happen right out in the open next to you while you drink your tea.
It's the perfect storm of applied physics, private healthcare, and shifting legal frameworks. And honestly, it serves as a really powerful reminder about the people around us.
How so?
Well, the next time you are out in public, whether you're at a cafe or waiting for a train or just sitting in a park,
Hmm.
the people at the next table might be fighting invisible battles.
Yeah, you never know what someone is dealing with.
Right. And they might be relying on newly legal tools and advanced technologies just to be able to eat a meal or exist in public without debilitating pain or anxiety.
It really makes you rethink the assumptions we make about the people around us.
It really does.
I mean, if a simple piece of paper from a doctor and a subtle change in temperature inside a little electronic device can instantly transform someone from a criminal into a legally protected patient just eating breakfast,
Yeah.
what other deeply stigmatized behaviors in our society are just one small legal or technological shift away from becoming completely boringly normal?
That's a great question.
It's definitely something to think about the next time you smell something unexpected at a coffee shop. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.